back again. Like I said, this is going to be my top 10 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Now, I know there have been a lot of trailers coming out this past week. I only saw one, which was the Batman v Superman trailer, which I thought was really cool. So, if you're wondering if I was ever going to do that, no, I'm not. So, let's get to this. Number 10 on my list of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies is Last Action Hero. Now, this is an interesting movie because even though it bombed at the box office, it's actually a good movie. It's basically Cabin in the Woods or The Expendables before those movies existed. This is one of those meta movies, I guess you want to call it. It's about a kid who actually ends up in an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie thanks to a magic ticket. Now, it's interesting because it plays on all the little cliches of action movies themselves, where explosion happens and the main character survives when he shouldn't, and getting shot and surviving and completely unharmed. It's an interesting take on that, and they really have fun with it. And what I like is that Arnold Schwarzenegger really shows some of his comedic style in this too. He's making jokes about, oh yeah, why don't I just drive around and say, the bad guys are over there? Or when they say, when he does his catchphrase, I'll be back. Hey, see, you didn't think I was going to do that, did you? And the kid tells him, of course I knew you were going to do that. It's your catchphrase. And it's an interesting look into these sort of dynamic. And it's a fun movie. Unfortunately, it didn't get a lot of attention because I think it opened the same week as like Jurassic Park or some big blockbuster that just completely overshadowed everything else. And that's kind of a shame because the movie is actually pretty good. And like I said, it shows off some of Arnold Schwarzenegger's comedic stylings, which you don't really see in a lot of his movies. But it's a good movie. Check it out. Now, speaking of comedy, that leads me to my number 9 movie, which is Twins. Again, another comedy, and Arnold Schwarzenegger does a good job in this movie as one half of the twins trying to find his twin brother, played by Danny DeVito. Now, it's interesting because Arnold Schwarzenegger's character is very sheltered and he doesn't know about the world, and he plays it off very well. He has no idea how the rest of the world is because he's just been living in a little bubble basically because he's a result of a science experiment. And his interactions with Danny DeVito are very fun. And you can truly see he cares about his brother, and he tries to get his brother to see him as his brother and try to care about him the same way he cares about him, even though they've only just met. But the difference being that Arnold Schwarzenegger's character wanted to find his brother, whereas Danny DeVito's character could care less. And they're a good pairing. They have good chemistry together. I definitely recommend this movie if you want to check it out. So, number 8 on my list is True Lies. A bit of a comedy, but also action too. And it's an interesting movie. It's got Jamie Lee Curtis playing Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife, who is a CIA agent. Arnold Schwarzenegger is trying to live this double life of being a family man and trying to be a good husband and father, but at the same time being a CIA agent and almost never being able to spend time with his family because he's always, globetrotting and trying to prevent disaster on a global scale. And it's an interesting concept that I think that isn't done well enough in other movies. And it was done pretty well in this one, I think. And I enjoyed the little chemistry between Arnold and Jamie Lee Curtis, but also with him and Tom Arnold, who's basically a sidekick, or one of his sidekicks. And it's an interesting little bit of comedy between the two of them as well. Not to mention this scene where Jamie Lee Curtis gets dragged into the whole situation. I'm not gonna spoil too much of any of these movies, except for maybe my top 5. But I think it's a cool movie, and it kind of plays into a little bit of the stereotypes and the cliches of action movies, but at the same time, it doesn't take itself too seriously, just seriously enough so that you can actually sit down and enjoy it without thinking it's a comedy. It's an interesting movie because I had not seen movies where the CIA agent actually has a family life, and to see him try to be a family man in this is actually good. It's a nice little difference between what you see in other Arnold Schwarzenegger movies when we're more action oriented. Now, speaking of something you don't usually see from Arnold Schwarzenegger, brings me to my number 7 movie, which is Kindergarten Cop. Now, Kindergarten Cop, again, another comedy. I honestly think in another life, Arnold Schwarzenegger would have been a famous comedian. If it wasn't for the fact that he was a 2-time powerlifting champion and a former Mr. Olympia, I think he would have been a comedian. I honestly think, because he's built like an action hero, but he's got good comedic timing. He's got the mind of sometimes of a comedian. And it's cool to see in this. What's cool about this movie is that you get to see him be uncomfortable. In a lot of the movies, he's straight-laced badass. Even in Twins, he's not uncomfortable. He's just naive. But in this one, he's a cop again, going undercover, pretending to be a kindergarten teacher, and seeing him first trying to deal with the kids is pretty damn funny. Looking back at it now, it's funnier now as an adult, I think, trying to watch this guy try and handle kids when he has no idea how to do that. So I like that, and him trying to be a teacher and trying to understand what it is to teach, and also growing a bond with the students. It's a good concept, and it's done well. I thought Arnold Schwarzenegger does a good job with that, and I think it's not discussed enough when it comes to Arnold movies. They usually talk about mainly the Terminator franchise, which brings me to my number 6, which is Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. Now, this movie is pretty divisive to some people, to a lot of Terminator fans. I happen to think it's a good movie. I said that in my Terminator retrospective. Now, my thoughts about it is that, like I said, it made sense for it to happen because he even said in the movie, Judgment Day is inevitable. And when you think about it, it's kind of makes sense because you have a giant company like Cyberdyne Systems. The ball was already rolling when they first reverse engineering that first Terminator, with the ARM and the CPU. The ball was already rolling because you don't think a company like that would have government contracts, military contracts, subsidiaries, other groups and companies that would already have a little bit of that knowledge as well in order to build on, even though the main building was destroyed. It was already going to happen. All he did in Judgment Day was postpone it. So I like that. Also, the idea of using a woman as a Terminator in this movie, I thought was a good idea because, again, like I said in my retrospective, if you're going to have somebody blend in, it can't be too imposing, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the first movie. And having a woman do it was a nice twist as well, because just like in Terminator 2, you had someone who was a little less assuming that you would think would be the weaker of the two Terminators. It's actually Arnold is the weaker of the two. Now, I also think as an action movie, this is a lot of fun, and the fight scenes, the action sequences, it's a lot of fun to watch. And I know it's not as good as the first 2 Terminator movies. I'll get to those in the next video. But I think that if you take a step back and look at it, it's not bad. It's actually a decent movie. It's a good movie, I think. And a little bit of comedy to it, with him being a little bit more human and learning a little bit more about how to interact with, and yeah, it's a decent movie. I don't want to ramble. And so, also, quick spoiler, I guess there is a twist ending to this, and I think that the other characters, the John Connor character, and I forget the female lead in this one, I'm sorry, they do a good job, and John Connor in this one is also, you could tell he's been running since the last Terminator movie. He's been on the run, and it was done well. He comes off as paranoid, just like his mom was in the second movie. So, Sarah Connor, I know the name, don't worry. Also, the fact that the Terminator not only goes after him, but also his generals and his lieutenants in the war is a good idea. It shows that they're not just going after John Connor, they're also going after people that support him. So, taken as a whole, I think the movie is good. Again, not as good as the first two, but definitely shouldn't be hated. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Now, I'm not going to ask you what your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is in this video. I want to ask you what Arnold Schwarzenegger movie you think is the worst. The worst. And I'm talking an actual Arnold movie. Like, he's the star, not one of the co-stars like he was in Batman and Robin. Because that would probably win, hands down. But I'm talking about like Junior or Jingle All the Way, or any of the movies where he's like a big part of the movie. So, let me know what you think. What do you think of the movies I've listed so far? So, until the next video, later.